Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Homemakers Podcast. And we're really excited today to be talking about episode 2 and episode 3 of The Way Home. Very fun. And I am film and sometimes TV critic Rachel Wagner, and Kristen Maldonado is here with me.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here to talk about The Way Home. I'm loving the show so much. Yeah. So I'm ready.
Yeah, and Michelle couldn't make it. She had a thing come up, an emergency come up. So I know she really wanted to, though. So we'll hear her thoughts in the next update about the show. But yeah, Kristen, why don't you you've been on a number of times, so for the record, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little about what you think about the show?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Kristen Maldonado. I'm a movie and TV critic. I run the website Pop Culture Planet at popcultureplanet.net, which has a podcast and video component on YouTube. And I just love watching and talking about movies and television.
Yeah.
And I haven't really watched that many Hallmark television shows. I think the only one I've really gotten into or whatever was around the Halloween season. I started watching The Good Witch, and I did a whole intense binge watch of all the movies, all the seasons, but that was well after the fact that it was not even on anymore, So but when I heard about The Way Home, I love a time travel multi-generational story, and so I was like, this sounds up my alley. So yeah, I've just really enjoyed all the episodes that we've seen so far. But I love seeing that idea that you could go back in time, maybe connect with your parents and learn more about them, build a closer bond. It's maybe because I love Back to the Future so much. But yeah.
Well, it's really interesting because they haven't done very many shows for Hallmark. I mean, the last, I guess, new show would be When Hope Calls, which was a spinoff of When Calls the Heart that only lasted one season, and so that, I guess, if that counts, it feels just kind of just part of When Calls the Heart, which is of course their biggest hit that they've had for 10. It's going on season 10 coming up. Wow. But yeah, I mean, they really haven't had that many shows. There's Cedar Cove, which was way back. Then they had Signed, Sealed, Delivered, which turned into movies. That's still probably the best thing they've ever done. And then Good Witch and Chesapeake Shores, and that's it. They just have not done that many shows for they're more of a movie place.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. But I feel like even I've only watched one other show on the network, and I feel like the quality seems higher than I anticipated, and it feels like a serious kind of fantasy drama, which I really like.
Well, and I was nervous going into it because I'm not a big fan of the sullen, mopey teenager. That archetype drives me crazy, and so a lot of YA shows just aren't for me. Just they're not made for me, so that's fine. But I was a little nervous about that, but I think they've done a good job with Alice's character and really developing these 3 women. We've gotten to know them a lot in just 3 episodes.
Yeah, we definitely have. I'm a young adult stan, so this has all the elements that I like, because you get all the different generations of the young adult, you got the 90s vibes, and you got the mom trying to figure it out, and the grandmother struggling to deal with everybody coming back home, and so I'm
it's a little crazy to me that 1999 is going back in the past, oh no.
It's so funny. I mean, honestly though, I feel like people love the 90s. That fashion has never really gone out of style, so maybe it's not too hard for
I mean, that's when well, technically I finished high school in 1998, but I graduated a year early, so 1999 is my graduation year. So
you're I was there, I was Yeah, I remember, I was in elementary school, but I remember when 2000s was happening, and it was oh my God, is the world gonna blow up? Our computer's gonna stop working?
Yeah.
Y2K.
Yeah, that was a wild time for sure. Uh, well, let's talk about the episodes. So we have this episode 2 is called Scar Tissue, and it's Kat is presented with a book deal that requires her to dredge up terrible memories. Dell wants to say goodbye to the past while Alice yearns to return there. So overall, what do you think about this episode? How do you think it followed up to the pilot?
I like this episode. I think it gave us some more background on things, or kind of gave more background on like some of that emotional family stuff, especially with Jacob. And also kind of makes you question like what's going on with all this time travel stuff, because it seems like Alice not only can she try time travel, but she can't necessarily just do whatever she wants with it. So I'm curious to see like how are they gonna, keep exploring that. And it just made me think like could time travel be like a Landry family thing that maybe they just don't know about? Like I kept thinking, Jacob, the whole thing is that he's missing. They don't really know whatever happened to him. And I'm like, could this kid have time travel too? Like that's my whole like, I don't know, like I either think that when they get deeper into it, either they're going to be able to save him in some way, or maybe they're going to find out he had time traveled, and maybe there's a way that they can, find him. Maybe he's somewhere in just like another time period. That's what I was thinking. It just made me like feel like there's all these theories that could come up. And something else that I thought was really interesting was they kind of, talk more about like the family history, and they bring up that 1814 almanac log, the family log. And I was like, wait a minute, 1814, that's like the first scene we saw.
Yeah.
First episode. So I'm like, oh, there's something there. What if that, I don't know why, but I rewatched that part again after we saw that. And I was like, what if that was Alice? I don't know. It looked like a young teenage girl. And so I'm like, what if she's able to time travel to more than just back to the 90s? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that I thought was maybe missing in the pilot, is that you don't have really much surprise from Alice about going back in time. You know what I mean? Like she goes and she's just kind of like, oh, this is fun. And I'm like, if I went through a magic lake, I would be pretty shocked.
Yeah. No,
I'd be like, wow, that was that's surprising.
No, totally. So
Yeah.
I just feel like this second episode like just made me think more about like what kind of theories can we come up with moving forward, because it's definitely everything's rooted in that family and in what happened to Jacob. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to come back to that 1814, because I mean, we've already seen the connections, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if we kind of go back other places. And maybe that's part of why, I mean, obviously Dell would be sad about her son, but maybe there's also some kind of guilt in that too. Does she know about this? Well, it's just gonna be interesting to see what happens.
yeah, definitely.
Did she feel bad because she introduced time travel to the family, or how much she's going to be involved? We have, I mean, Elliot at the beginning of this movie, we see him as both the young Elliot and the new Elliot, or adult Elliot, I should say. And he sees her jump through the lake at the beginning. And so he knows.
I feel like he's gonna be her like mentor, I guess. That, like, I wonder if he'll be able to kind of like figure out more of like, I mean, he's a science teacher, right? So well, like, why is this able to happen? Like, why is like he's the one that tells her like this only works for you, but it only works in certain times. Like you just can't go whenever. So like, how does he know that? Like, what else does he know that he's not sharing? Because when she goes back in time, I feel like she shares a lot with him that he's gonna know in the future. So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem with time travel, is that like Kat would remember Alice, would remember, I mean, is that why she named her Alice, was because of this person that she had known? And if she jumps in the next episode, she jumps in the lake. So I guess we'll see what happens with that, but she would remember that if she had time traveled.
But I guess she did that as an adult now. So maybe like in the future, I don't know, the time travel's all crazy. It's like that loop of like, did this happen, but it can't happen until this happens, and then like messing things up, or is that fate, like that you have to do in order to make everything work?
Because if she went back in time, she would remember that she had went back in time, and so that she wouldn't be as upset. But it hasn't actually happened yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it had it does, it kind of hurts the brain when you think about it too much. Yeah, you do kind of have to treat it like Doctor Who, in the sense of like in Doctor Who, they are always making all these different changes to time, and it's never really, there's like a couple episodes, but for the most part, it's never really dealt with. Like there's no ripple effects, from like if you step on a bug in the past, does that change the whole time continuum, whatever. They never really deal with that. They just kind of, your episode, he helps Rosa Parks out, or whatever it might be, the doctor doing, he or she, and so that's kind of what you have to do a little bit here. But there are differences that are, like we say, we keep getting these clues, so you can't 100% do that. It's not like standalone like Doctor Who is. There's a continuing story.
Yeah.
I don't know,
affects each other, and
yeah. So they do say Jacob's out there, we'll find him here, and they say a Landry never gives up hope.
Yeah.
And Dell says, see, I told you she'd come home. So that also makes me think she knows.
You think she knows?
Yes. You don't think so?
I don't know. I didn't really think about it. Yes, I just, because isn't that she also is like, yeah, but like the mom's like, yeah, well, Jacob didn't. And it's like, oh, so I don't know. I mean, it's like a small town, so she could be, maybe this is her line that's like Elliot's line in the first episode, that's like, any place or time that you need help, I'll help you.
Yeah.
I didn't think she knew, but maybe she does. I'm gonna go no, but maybe we'll, if you go yes, we'll see as we keep talking what happens.
Yeah. So we have Kat getting this book deal, and I guess maybe it feels like, why would anybody really be interested in this random person's life story? Like, what is it that, I don't know, would this really be a big seller? I don't know.
I mean, maybe in this world that could have been like a really huge news story. But also, I feel like when Alice was trying to do research and learn about it, like it was very hard for her to like find any information.
Yeah.
So I don't know, unless it's one of those just like never solved, like what if she writes a book about it and then eventually solves the mystery on her own? I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure why she'd want a book deal, but I guess you gotta suspend some disbelief here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I remember there's a really good memoir called A Girl Named Zippy by Haven Kamel. And I went to a lecture or whatever, Q&A for her. And she's pretty like open and honest in the memoir about her family, and particularly her father, and her mixed experience with him, I guess. And somebody asked her, like, how did she feel about writing all this stuff about her family? And she said she was pretty frank about it, and said if she could go back, she wouldn't do it. It was just too painful for her and her family, and people never forgave her and for it. So it's a tough thing. I think it would be really hard. I mean, even on, like, I try really hard on my YouTube channel and my blog to just share my story, to not like share people in my family or, whatever, to just be talking about me, unless I have their permission, I guess. But even that, I had mentioned a few things about growing up in my review of Encanto, or on my channel. And because it's all about family, you kind of have to talk about family. And my dad was like, wow, that was really autobiographical. Like, he wasn't mad, but he was a little bit uncomfortable about it. And I can imagine if like I wrote a whole tell-all expose about my family, that would be very difficult.
Yeah. I guess that's why Dell's like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yes.
But
And
I wonder now that you've said, does she know about this? I wonder if she like knows things as
yeah,
well. Oh.
because if she knows that Jacob isn't actually gone, but he's lost in time, then she may have like all kinds of guilt about that.
Mm.
Maybe she introduced him to it. Who knows? We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if we were thinking about like, does Dell have this time travel ability? Maybe that girl we saw in 1814 could have been a young Dell.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Maybe jumping to like a more current timeline for us that then she would grow up in and then like be like, I'll never
Yeah.
touch time travel again. Oh my god, we could theorize on so much stuff about this time.
Yeah, it could be like, have you ever seen Highlander?
No.
It's a good movie. It's a pretty good movie. But in there that well, in Outlander is somewhat similar, as far as jumping through time.
Okay.
Yeah. But but yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. And then she even says, so Kat says to Elliot, there's a scene where she puts her head on his shoulder. They have this like cute moment, and she says, do you remember our friend Alice?
Yeah.
So she's starting to look into this, and you have the photo, the Polaroid that's blurry. So it's, you had mentioned in your Insta story you did that it had definitely Back to the Future illusion
right?
there.
Yeah, and I love how even later on, I believe Elliot makes a joke in the third episode about how like, oh, you gotta watch that Polaroid because if you start disappearing like in Back to the Future, like they make the joke themselves, which I thought was really funny.
Yeah. Back to the Future, in my opinion, is a perfect film.
Yes, I agree. Number one, my favorite movie of all time. So I think that's why I love all this time travel stuff. Like literally, like when I grew up, my dad was the one that introduced us to the movies, and like it became like a family favorite. And now like when things like this show come out, like I'm like, Dad, you're gonna love it. And my dad's watching this show. Like he's watching it too. And he's like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next. Like he loves all that time travel stuff, and we'll like share like other movies and shows to watch. It's like, oh, this also has these elements and whatnot. So he like loves it, and it's so funny because he's like, yeah, I'll watch the way home too.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I mean, it's just the Back to the Future, it has something to say about the way we kind of view our parents and how that changes when we actually see them as like real people. I think there's like a moment in most people's lives where they're like realize that their parents were just making it up every day. They were just trying their best. Yeah.
And then you maybe you form that friendship, because you realize we're more similar than we are different. You're not like this, person who knows everything and gets everything right. You're my friend. We're same.
Yeah. I mean, does it make sense that they would never have had a memorial for Jacob?
I guess because he was missing, they never found a body or anything. Maybe it kind of just became like one of those things that was too hard, and then Kat left. And so then maybe they just never really did anything, because maybe there was still like that hope of like, what if we did find him, And then maybe at this point it's like, okay, well, we're all reunited again. Let's just close this chapter because we've been holding on to all of this for so long. I thought it made sense.
Yeah.
It worked for me.
So Kat sees, I read Danny. Who's Danny? Danny in the cemetery.
Oh, I think he was just like a classmate.
So she's starting to look into this. She goes to her dad's grave. She sees that Jacob is on the tombstone, and she's upset about that. She's upset about that. I guess she sees that as them giving up. But I really feel like that's not that uncommon, especially when you're talking it's been 20 years or so. He's gone. We have the 1814 almanac log.
Yes,
That's
which
definitely,
I feel like is going to be very important. I feel like it's going to be important.
which is also could be a little bit of an homage to Back to the Future.
That's
They
true.
have the log, the almanac. I mean, they have the almanac.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Oh, I like that. No, and it ties back to all the whatever stuff was going on in that 1814. Like that's where it all started, and that's where their family log started. So it's like, I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah. So then we have that Dell says goodbye to Jacob, and I feel like Andie MacDowell is really anchoring the show. She's she's a good actress.
I feel like what's so fun about this show is that since you have those 3 generations, like you really have someone that you can like everyone can connect with.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, like if you really, it's like I want the emotional, connection there. Okay, well, Andie MacDowell's doing that, and it's like, okay, now we want like the fun, going back in time vibes. That's what the daughter's doing, and then when you have like the more grounded, like trying to figure out, all these family dynamics and everything. You have like the mom Cat, kind of returning home, and like what does that feel like? So I think there's a lot of great, just like vibes going on throughout all the characters that you can really like latch on to.
Yeah, that's what makes sort of the teenage angst palatable, because you have like it's about a family.
Definitely.
Excuse me. Yeah. So at the end we have Alice jumping in the lake at the end, and then she sees Kat and Jacob. And so that's very sweet. And so what would you give this episode 1 to 10?
Maybe a 7, because I feel like we got a lot more backstory, but I also want to see like more of them in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like cool to get like the background, which I think that you definitely need, especially when it comes to like the family aspect, but I'm ready to go back in time.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So then we I would give it also, that's why I was thinking a 7. Yeah, it's a like good building block episode, which you need after the pilot. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
Okay, so episode 3 is I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. This is Alice falls in love with the past and has her first kiss. Kat starts a job with the local newspaper, and Dell deals with bittersweet memories attached to Colton's boat. So overall, what do you think about this episode?
I really liked this episode. I loved like the going back in time and like just seeing the bond that Alice and young Kat are having. I loved when they went to the party, and then now like Alice is becoming part of the past, like she's finding the guy that she likes. I'm like, who is this guy in the present day? Like, I can't wait to find out who he is. And just I feel like there's a lot of interesting sort of like parallels going on with Back to the Future, with Alice in Wonderland. They keep showing that book, and Alice is going on these adventures to the past, so it's very like, I don't know, paralleled, I would say. And I just feel like
it's interesting what you're saying about her becoming more entrenched in the past. I mean, if you think about something like Outlander, she ends up having like a whole relationship in the past, right? And that most of the seasons are in the past, and so I think that's going to be interesting to see how this plays out with Nick.
Yeah.
If that's going to be like an ongoing, or if this is just kind of a one-time little thing, or I'm probably not one time, but just a more of a, if this is going to be like a multi-episode arc with Nick, I'm very curious about that.
Yeah, I just think it's so interesting. And it's like Alice is sort of like, she doesn't want to be in the present day right now. Like she wants to, like, she's experiencing all these exciting things in the past. And the stuff with the guy Nick kind of reminded me of this show Intertwined on Disney Plus, where a girl, it's a similar story, but it's Argentinian and it's like a musical and all this fun stuff, where like this girl goes to the past, and she ends up falling for this guy, and like towards the end of the first season, somehow the guy's able to go into the future too. And I'm like, I can't wait to see what happens next, because that sounds crazy. And so I wonder like what they can do with this. Like, is this something with this time travel that only the Landrys can do? Is there some way this guy Nick could come to the future with her if they really were to like fall in love or something? Or is she gonna, I don't know, want to stay in the past and not live her like regular time? I don't know. There's so much stuff that happens.
Well, it's so weird because like if you think about Back to the Future, when he goes back, it's what, about 20 years ago, right? 25, maybe something like that. But it feels so different from the 80s to the 50s, right? Whereas like maybe it's just because I'm living it. It doesn't feel, 1999 doesn't feel like that different than
it doesn't. Honestly, the clothes are the same. That's what people are wearing now. Like that's what's cool. Yeah, the biggest
which is
thing
scary. There's certain fashion that I thought, okay, that's never going to come back. That was so ugly.
Right? It's like
the high-waisted jeans. Like what?
Right?
Nobody looks good in those jeans.
The biggest difference is like maybe their internet is not as like established, or like they're not like they do now, you know, like that's, but like they're making a lot of musical references to things that people know. Like I kept wondering, like there's times when Alice is playing music in this episode that I was like, wait, did that come out yet at this point? Or are they gonna be like, whoa, you wrote an incredible song? And she's like, oh, like I did Britney Spears in like 1 year, but I guess that wasn't the case. But I was like waiting for something like that.
They could do more with that. They probably will, because she's a singer, so it would make sense. I mean, that would also be like in a Back to the Future, and your kids will love it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we also met Byron in the last episode. I forgot to talk about that. So do you think that Del and Byron are going to be a thing?
I mean, it seems like they're setting up a little slow burn, but I don't know if she's really, I mean, throughout these episodes, it seems like maybe she's getting ready to try to start moving past certain things. So, I mean, maybe eventually she'll get to the point where she's like, all right, I'll give Byron a chance. But I think she's still, they're all still kind of like working towards getting over certain things like that.
Yeah. And so then Kat tries to get a job from Byron, and she wants to work at the paper.
Yes.
And it's like an old school newspaper office that I don't think you see very much anymore, but it's kind of charming.
It's like run by like one guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm the one guy writing this entire paper every day.
Then we have the boat situation. So it's a pretty big memento to have from that. Her husband had gotten it I think pretty soon before the tragedy happens. And so she's just had it sitting there, and she's thinking about finally selling it.
Yeah, they all kind of like are going back and forth about that, right? Like I think, I mean, I sort of get the significance, but also like maybe it was just more of like what the boat could have meant for like the future of like, if they were all together as a family, they would have been like out on the boat and stuff. But I feel like you just see that one scene where like the dad comes back on the boat and scratches it when he's looking for Jacob. And so you kind of see those like scars, I guess, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
And like on their lives.
Right.
So I guess they got to figure out something, because there's definitely a metaphor there.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say I think that boating is like the perfect family activity. It is so much fun. We used to go boating all the time. Growing up, and I mean, I love the water, you know me, I love being in the water, but I think that just boating is the perfect activity because like in my family it was hard to come up with stuff because we had like older kids and then much younger kids. So it was hard to find something that the whole family could enjoy doing, but like boating was something because like anybody can have fun. Like you can be super athletic, you can just sit and enjoy. You can swim, it's fun for everybody.
Oh, that's fun.
I think.
If it's a small boat, I can do it. If it's a big boat, I can do it. But if it's a medium boat, I'm seasick.
Oh, really?
I'm out. Yeah. We went once to this, like on this boat, and it was like a whaling thing to like see if we saw whales. And the whole time I was like, I was dying. I was just sick the whole trip. I was like, I need to get off this boat.
Yeah, I've never gotten seasick. Even on the I thought maybe on a cruise I might, but I was okay. I've been lucky that way, but I guess that's the one. It would not be good if you were getting sick,
right?
But yeah, so everything in 1999 is very idyllic, like even shot with a different kind of like filter. Everything looks very glowing and very like so I think that's intentional.
Yeah. I mean, you see like how Alice is very much like glamorizing the past anyway. Like, you know, she loves going back and, you know, hanging out with her mom as a kid and, you know, being with the whole family. And it's just like a better, like everyone's happier. There's no like trauma at that point yet. So I think she's really like, you know, just falling for that. And, you know, will she be able to stop everything that's going to happen?
Yeah. I mean, and they do make it seem more old-fashioned than it was. Like, I mean, I got my first cell phone in 2000. And it was like pretty much everyone had one. But I mean, I remember when 9/11 happened, I mean, everybody was on their phones. Everybody was like, I mean, it wasn't like some rarity that, oh, you're super rich, so you have a cell phone. Pretty much everybody by 2001 had a cell phone. And so the idea of it being like, what are text messages 1999? I think they would know.
Maybe like even if it's not like as huge, like you know what it is.
Yeah, I think you'd know what it is. But I don't know. Maybe not in the country. Which they're at.
I don't know. I don't think I had a phone till like maybe 2002, 3, I would think. But
yeah, that was right when, I mean, I got it because I was a teaching assistant and I wanted to be able to have a number of people could call if they needed help. So that's why I had gotten it in 2000, I believe. Yeah. But anyway, and so we find out the cat has this sun tattoo and there's this big party at the Cove.
So fun.
Yeah. And this is, I think, very, again, very Back to the Future-y, kind of seeing your parents as like real people is sort of the theme here. And but then she meets Nick. Were you surprised that she wasn't more hesitant to like have this experience with Nick in the past?
I don't know. I mean, I guess when you think about it, like, yeah, what is this person going to be doing in the future that like, how does he connect into the story? So like, is it really a good idea to like form a relationship with people from the past when you're from a different time? Like that seems probably dangerous. Like, what if you just messed everything up? What if this guy was going to like do something like really important, and now that he met you, it like his whole life is going to change? Like you're just wrapping this person up in all this time travel stuff. I guess if you ever tell them, or maybe this was meant to happen, right? Like this whole time travel, like it's like this loop of like, what if she was supposed to meet him and that's why these things happen? Because I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, they completely nailed Nick's look. He looks very 1999
He
heartthrob, like
does. The
Brad
hair.
Pitt, Kurt Cobain, like totally got that kind of look going.
Yeah. Do you think that it's a bad idea that she's gonna go and hang out with this guy?
Yes, I think it's a terrible idea.
Uh,
But she does get her first kiss, which is kind of fun.
but that's it. But it also like technically didn't happen, right? Because she didn't really exist then. I don't know. It's all like
Yeah,
mind meld.
it does seem like it's asking for trouble in the
Mhm.
space-time continuum whole thing. But yeah, I don't know. So I'm curious if how much Nick becomes a player, or if it's just going to be kind of, because there's an actor who's on Heartland named Kerry James. We've had him on the podcast, and evidently he's guesting on the show. He's coming up, and he does kind of look a little bit like Nick.
You think he
So
could
is
be
he?
modern day Nick?
Yeah, I think so.
Ah,
Yeah.
I really want to know what his thing is. Like, what is he doing in the present day? Like, what if he was like, I fell in love with this girl in the past, and like I've spent my whole life looking for her because I know she
Yeah.
or what if I don't know, there's so many places that it could go.
But that would be like really weird if modern day Alice, who's a teenager, runs into grown up Nick.
And what if he's like, you look familiar to me?
Yeah.
That would be so crazy. Oh no, I don't know what's gonna happen. I hope that something happens where she's able to take him from the past to modern day and maybe they'll be together.
Yeah.
But again, like, what about his life then? I don't know.
It's complicated.
I feel like he's gonna be important though, because like, why introduce him, right? If he doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
And that's like a big deal to get your first kiss.
Yeah,
Like a
that's
big
really
moment.
yeah.
And then she also does sing Hit Me Baby One More Time.
Which I was really hoping they were gonna be like, wow, we've never heard that song before. That was amazing. You're a great songwriter. And it'd be like a yesterday situation.
Yeah.
But
oh yeah, that's a good one to compare to as well.
Yeah. But I guess the song existed at that time. But
when did it come out?
Oh, I don't know. We should
let me see. 1998, so just barely.
Okay.
Barely.
But I thought they did a good take on it too. Like it was a little bit different. Like it was like a
Mhm.
little like edgy and broody, and I think she's a pretty good singer.
Yeah. So we also have Monica. We saw her in the last episode, and she was like a friend with Kat, but also she says sometimes I feel a little intimidated by you. So there's a rivalry a little bit there.
Yeah, I feel like I think that they had a rivalry growing up, and I feel like maybe as they're getting older now, like there's still that like unfinished unfinished business of like apologizing to each other and like moving on past that. But I think that I don't know, I feel like I get the vibe, especially after this conversation, that maybe they're gonna like actually be friends.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We also have Landry telling Dell, I don't want to go anywhere without you. So yeah. I really like, I forget his name, Jefferson Brown, who's playing Colton. I guess it's Colton Landry. And he's good. I loved him in Good Witch.
Who's he in Good Witch?
He played this character named Ben, who was dating Stephanie, and they had the best relationship.
Was he the one that was the like at the hospital and the church?
He was the one that they renovated the movie theater. And then end of the season. Yeah, they were so good. And then he was gone. I was so sad. Yeah. But anyway, I like him. He's a good actor. And then so Alice tells young Kat about time travel.
I really thought like, is she gonna like really like double down and be like, no, like for real? And then she didn't. She just let it be a joke. So I wonder if like eventually she will tell her for real. Because I mean, that's your mom. Like, that's, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to not tell someone. I feel like that in my, like, I would have been like, I'm your daughter. Like, I would have just done it. Like, I wouldn't have been able to like keep it a secret, I feel like.
Yeah, that's the thing I was saying about the excuse me. That's the thing about the pilot, that like she wasn't that excited about the fact that she's going back in time. I thought I would be more excited if I was like,
I'd be
what is happening?
What is going on? But I would
So
have been like, I'm your daughter. I would have told them immediately.
yeah,
I would have just revealed it all. I wouldn't be able to help myself.
So yeah, Kat tells Dell she doesn't have to sell the boat. And they have kind of a moment. And then we have Alice. Who's Andy? I forgot that. Who's Andy?
He's just like a guy at a coffee shop.
Okay, yeah. Alice gives him her number. And then Kat sees Alice jumping in the lake, and then she jumps in the lake at the end. So that was quite the cliffhanger.
Oh my gosh. I was so excited. And the fact that she didn't come up, like she went, like she definitely time traveled. Do you think she time travels?
Yeah, I do.
Like, you think she time traveled? I think
I do.
Right. Imagine the next episode is just her head pops up and she's like, nope, I didn't go anywhere. I just want to. No, I think she went. And I'm dying to know, like, if she talks to them, like if she's gonna say something. Like, she has to, right? Like, she has to be like, we both time traveled, like, right?
Yeah. No, I mean it. And then you get into more questions about, okay, did she remember this? How did this all pan out? It's gonna be, I had to because we have a screener, we got some screeners. I had to like control myself to not watch the next episode.
It's hard.
Yeah. But yeah, and then Elliot's kind of role in all of this is very interesting.
I feel like he's keeping notes on time travel. Like, do you think he's going to try to submit this to like win an award or something? Like, and also, why isn't he sharing it with Alice? Like, I'd be like, here's my notebook that I've been writing in.
Yeah.
Facts about this so that you know what to do, and like we can figure this out. Like, I think you could analyze it so much deeper if he would just like pass over that notebook that he's been working on. But I'm also curious because like I feel like, at least based off of like what they've talked about in this episode, like going into the next one, or at least the next few, like, you know, they talk about young Kat's gonna go to camp, which is where she met Brady, who's her, you know, her ex-husband and Alice's dad. So I feel like we have to see him eventually, right? Like a young version of him, and like what is he gonna be like? I'm trying to think of who else. Like, I don't know, there's just all these people that like, you know, they grew up with that I feel like, you know, have to show up. Like, I mean, we saw a little bit of young Monica, but like, is she going to have like a bigger role?
Right.
We've talked about young, you know, Nick. I'm dying to see what goes on with him as the modern day Nick, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know, what's going to happen with Jacob? Are we going to find him on one of the, you know, and you know, 1814 is we're going to get there eventually. Yeah.
And well, the fact that Kat was able to jump in the lake and like, it's pretty clear that she time traveled. Like, again, like, is this something in their family? Does it have to do with the 1814 ancestors and like the family almanac and I don't know, all this stuff. And there's also that mystery of who sent Dell's letter. And now I'm thinking, what if it's someone that's been time traveling? Like, what if it's like Alice time traveling and then like it sees the letter and sends it so that they can be moved to live with her, so that then they can,
because she said that it was in Dell's handwriting though.
Yes, exactly. So well, she wrote the letter and then she never sent it. I thought they said in one of the episodes that she had like officially written it and then like didn't send it, and so she just like kept it for herself, and then someone took it and sent it. And so now what if it's one of them? What if it's Alice or Kat being like, well, we want to come back home so we can time travel and all this stuff.
So what will you give this episode 1 to 10?
Like a 9 or a 10, maybe a 9. I don't want to go too crazy. Maybe something even better will happen. I'm gonna go 9.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, and I agree. I would make this an 8 or a 9. But yeah, I think it was really fun, and the whole like homage to making mixtapes, like, that was very. I missed mixtapes. They were fun.
Oh, she was like, "Oh man, I let the song play 3 times by accident. Now I finally got it. Press play, record."
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well, let us know what you think if you're listening, what you think of these episodes, how the show's going.
I want to hear about the series. I feel like so many things you could dive into.
Yeah. I want to get Heather on with the Heather Kunkel, the showrunner, because I'm just so curious of like how far they have it planned and what they have, going for it, because it's done very well. It led, I think, the ratings. They put out a press release or whatever. I should have had that open, but that it led Sunday night, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I just feel like there's something about, I know a lot of the like Hallmark projects, and this one in particular have like a lot of like Canadian actors, and like they film in Canada and all this stuff, and like I mean this one's even set in Canada, but I feel like Canadians do television so good. Like I just love but like they think out and really plot out something like this to be like, okay, we know exactly where we want to go, and like you could just see that they've really like put a lot of thought into it, and it's not like, oh, we just like forgot about this and forgot about that. Like I feel like there's all these little elements already, like little Easter eggs, and I'm like, oh, I think this might mean something, and like, how does this connect back? And it's so exciting.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that it's, the story about 3 generations of women that's written, and the showrunners are mother-daughter. So that's interesting too.
Awesome. I didn't know
that. Yeah. So anyway, let us know what you think, what your theories are in the comments or on Twitter. And Kristen, thanks so much for coming on and doing this. I really appreciate it. And how can people follow you and your content?
Well, thank you. I'm happy to chat about the show with you. It was so fun. And you can find me everywhere at Kaymaldo, KAYMALDO, or on my website at popcultureplanet.net, where we talk all about the world of entertainment through a lens of inclusion and representation.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. I've been at the Sundance Film Festival, and with me and my friend Marcel Lachelle, we've been having so much fun. So check that out, and also follow us at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all over social media. We're back on Facebook. This is exciting after a 2-month drought, and so check that out. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That really helps us, especially for a new show like this. And if you have any ideas for the name of the podcast covering The Way Home, we're still researching. We're still going through some ideas. So let us know. And if you're listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group, which is a lot of fun, and our merch store. Check that out. And thanks again, Kristen, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.